The Great Misjudgment, the invisible army the Axis never saw. In the third week of August 1944, German General Kurt von der Chevalerie stood before a situation map that no longer meant anything. Chevalerie was no ordinary soldier. He had fought on the Eastern Front at Kiev and was a veteran commander decorated with the oak leaves to the Knight's Cross. Yet that morning, the lines on his map were disappearing faster than reality itself. The American army advancing toward him was moving at a speed that German military manuals had never even imagined. Around 300 kilometers behind the front, Commander-in-Chief of the German Western Front, Gerd von Rundstedt, silently read his morning report. Rundstedt had been one of the architects of the unstoppable Wehrmacht that had conquered France in just 6 weeks in 1940. But now, speaking of the Americans he had once dismissed as soft and undisciplined, he would write, "The enemy knew our wall better than those who built it." This was not merely a war of tanks and aircraft. It was the story of one side placing its faith in skill and heroism, while the other built an enormous machine founded on standardization and logistics. Today we will examine why German and Japanese generals failed to understand what they were truly fighting until it was far too late. The 6.35mm disaster and the limits of copying. In January 1944, at the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, American weapons testers pulled the trigger on a new prototype. The weapon fired a single round and immediately jammed. The engineers were stunned. The firearm in their hands, designated the T-24, was supposed to be an almost perfect copy of Germany's feared MG-42 machine gun. American engineers had measured every component of a captured MG-42, calculating every angle down to the micron. But they overlooked one seemingly insignificant detail: 6.35 millimeters, just a quarter of an inch. That tiny difference between German and American ammunition would delay the development of an American general-purpose machine gun by more than a decade. Why couldn't they simply copy it? Because copying a weapon is not the same as understanding it. The MG-42 had not been born inside a firearms factory. It had been designed by Werner Gruner, an engineer whose previous experience was manufacturing sheet metal lanterns, not weapons. Instead of creating another expensive, finely machined gun like the MG-34, Gruner designed a weapon made largely from stamped steel. It fired 1,200 rounds per minute and earned the terrifying nickname Hitler's Buzzsaw. The American mistake was seeing only a collection of parts. German engineers had designed an integrated system in which everything, from the dimensions of the cartridge to the timing of the operating mechanism, worked together with remarkable precision. That lesson cost the U.S. Army years of development and countless lives. Because on the battlefield, sometimes a difference of only a quarter inch separates victory from defeat. The jerry can, the strategic genius of a fuel container. On a scorching September morning in 1942 in the Egyptian desert, Commander Richard Daniel watched American gasoline disappear into the sand. The standard American 5-gallon fuel cans were a disaster. They leaked at the seams, expanded under the desert sun, and required a wrench just to open. Nearly 40% of the fuel was lost before it ever reached the front lines. Just a few meters away, however, captured German fuel cans, known to the Allies as jerry cans, remained in perfect condition. British and American soldiers treated them like treasure, often trading cigarettes just to get one. The jerry can's brilliance lay in its details. German engineer Vinzenz Grünvogel had not designed it as a simple container, he designed it as a weapon. Recessed welds. When dropped, the impact struck the flat sides instead of the welded seams. X-shaped reinforcement. The embossed X wasn't decorative. It allowed the metal to flex under pressure without cracking. 3 handles. One soldier could carry a full can efficiently, while 2 soldiers could carry it together when empty or stacked. Internal air tube. Fuel poured smoothly in a continuous stream without splashing or glugging. The Americans had actually seen this design before the war. In 1939, engineer Paul Pleiss brought a sample from Berlin to Washington. American bureaucracy dismissed it with the attitude, "Our own cans are good enough." The result? Millions of gallons of fuel lost in North Africa. General Bernard Montgomery would later summarize its importance. In the desert, success depends on the simplest equipment, and the jerry can was one of the most important pieces of this war. The plug-and-play army and the craftsman's paradox. On paper, German tanks, especially the Panther and Tiger, were among the finest fighting machines ever built. But German engineering suffered from an invisible weakness, a lack of standardization. As historians such as Thomas Jentz have documented, parts for a Panther tank often varied depending on which factory had produced it. If a gear failed at the front, even having a replacement part wasn't enough. A skilled mechanic often had to spend hours filing, fitting, and adjusting it by hand before it would work. German workers were true craftsmen, but craftsmen became bottlenecks in a war won through mass production. The American approach was entirely different. Imagine an M4 Sherman. An engine built in Detroit would fit perfectly into a hull assembled nearly 3,000 miles away. An American maintenance battalion could replace a Sherman's engine in a field workshop in as little as 4 hours. The United States had introduced a plug-and-play philosophy to modern warfare. Industrial leaders like William Knudsen and Henry Kaiser transformed the production of tanks and ships into something resembling automobile assembly lines. When Kaiser built a Liberty ship in only 4 days and 15 hours, German intelligence believed the report was Allied propaganda. It wasn't. It was a manufacturing system. While the Axis powers focused on building the best machine, the Allies focused on building the best production line. White bread and donut trucks, psychological logistics. Wars are not won by ammunition alone. One of the greatest shocks experienced by German soldiers came not from the muzzle of an American rifle, but from the trays served in Allied prisoner of war camps. When German prisoners captured in Tunisia received lunch in 1943, 18-year-old Heino Eriksson stared in disbelief at a slice of white bread. It was so soft that when he pressed it with his finger, it sprang back into shape. German soldiers had spent years eating hard Kommissbrot, often stretched with barley and even sawdust. Yet the Americans could provide even prisoners at the far end of their logistical network with fresh white bread, canned fruit, and ice-cold Coca-Cola. That shattered the German belief that America was weak and economically exhausted. General Rundstedt had failed to notice another kind of military vehicle. Only 3 miles behind the front line stood trucks where college-educated American women, known as the donut dollies, served fresh donuts to exhausted troops. Their machines could produce around 400 donuts per hour. To German generals, these trucks had no military value. To them, logistics meant transporting ammunition. To the Americans, logistics also meant ensuring that every soldier felt like a human being, not merely another serial number. When a German soldier searched the body of a fallen American and found a letter that had traveled across the Atlantic in only 9 days alongside a bar of branded soap, he realized something profound. We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an entire continent.